Hello, 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 everyone. This is Dr. David Snyder checking in. Welcome to Weapons of Social Seduction Defense Against the Dark Arts. Today is all about understanding the art and science of covert influence, but from a very different perspective than many of us have thought about before, but one that we're often more painfully aware of than ever before, and that is being the target of aggressive or predatory persuasion tactics, as I like to call it. So, real quick, this class is really not for everybody. If you are somebody who never gets picked on, never gets insulted, never gets talked into doing something that you don't want to do, or have ever felt bad because you stood up for yourself, if you've never had any of those experiences, this is probably not the webinar for you. However, let's be very clear. Um, this course is going to require me to talk about some topics that are a little provocative, very triggering for some people, in fact. So I want to be very, very upfront and very, very transparent. I've been a student of these tactics and these techniques for a very, very long time. My intention here when I teach you these things is to give you the truth, to give you the things that work out in the street, why they work, how they work, and what to do with them or what not to do with them. Sometimes the things I say may be politically incorrect. Oh well, politically incorrect language, colorful metaphors, swearing, or the word boobies offends you. This is probably not the most useful use of your time. That being said, if you are somebody who appreciates straight talk, who appreciates fast, actionable things that you can put into practice right away, then this is probably a good investment for your time and energy. As we go through the talk today, and I will shout out to some of the people. I see some of our veterans in there, and I see some brand new people. So I'll be shouting out to you guys as we go. Um, I'm going to do one thing really quick here because apparently I turned on my captions and I need to hide those because it's really distracting me. Sorry about that. So let's get down to brass tacks. Are you in the right place? If this is is this the right investment of your time and energy? So let's start. If you can answer yes to three or more of the following questions, then this is probably a good place for you to be for the next 90 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how long we're together. Okay. So first of all, if you have you ever walked into a place or walked away from a conversation feeling emotionally exhausted or drained in any way? If you've answered yes to that, if you can answer that, type yes in the chat, right? If you've ever found yourself agreeing to something you didn't actually want without knowing why, type yep, that's me in the chat. If you found yourself, get this one, if you found yourself defending somebody else's toxic behavior, making excuses for them, type that in the chat. If you've ever felt someone was a little too charming, only to later realize that they were just pressing your buttons and they were saying all the things that you wanted to hear so you do what they wanted you to do, go ahead and type that in the chat. If you ever dated somebody who made you feel like you were always the problem, or if you've ever felt cornered in a sales call or a pitch, but you couldn't because you couldn't say no. If you've ever left a negotiation feeling like you gave too much away, type in the chat, right? If you've ever worked with a client or colleague who consistently left you doubting yourself, eh, maybe you want to spend some time with us today, right? If you've ever sensed in any way that you were being emotionally managed, even by someone you trusted, yeah, you know what to do, right? If you've ever, this is a big one. This is a big one, guys. If you've ever felt dependent on a coach, teacher, or mentor for your own sense of self worth, in other words, you lived for their approval, type that's me in the chat. Okay. If you've ever discovered, much to your chagrin, that you were trapped in somebody else's narrative, in other words, the facts were right, but the story was just not what happened, right? Without seeing it first, type that in the chat. Okay. If you'd like to learn how to recognize manipulation now before it has a chance to actually be used on you, and you want to be able to neutralize it in time, type yes in the chat. All right. So that was a pretty extensive list. Not all inclusive by any stretch of the imagination, because predatory persuasion takes many forms. And this is where we kind of get into trouble when we start talking about or navigating or understanding the art and science of human influence. Predatory persuasion is often highly subjective, and that is the problem. So, for the sake of our training today, for the sake of our training today, I would like to define predatory persuasion. All right. And I want to work with that, with the understanding that that definition can change from person to person and context to context. But I have to be very straight with you. We live in a world today where the idea, the concept that you are going to avoid persuasive messaging, whether you consider it manipulative or not, is just completely unrealistic. And it's the idealists in the world who wind up being targeted more than anybody else. So I'm not saying don't have ideals, don't have values, don't have rules that you live by and things like that. What I'm saying is you need to buffer that with a sense of pragmatism, a sense of understanding that sometimes people do bad things. And the only way to defend yourself against the people doing bad things is to retaliate and do not so great things yourself. Right? If running away sometimes just isn't an option. In fact, what you'll find out as we delve into the psychology of predatory persuasion or social predators, as I like to call them, that's something they look for. They look for somebody who's going to try to run or capitulate in some way, right? So if you stay until the end of today, I promise you that we're going to explore the dark, aberrant psychology of narcissists, sociopaths, and what I call character disturbed individuals. A lot of the things I'm going to be sharing with you is based on my own personal research, the work of my colleague Chase Hughes, as well as people like George K. Simon and Stephen Hassan, who is an expert in cult psychology and things of that nature. We'll be talking about some of the work of Dr. Wendy Patrick, as well as the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. I'm giving you all these names so that you understand that I'm not just making this stuff up. I take credit for the synthesis, not the source, because I want you to be ready and I want you to be prepared. That's something I've always been very, very adamant about, is that I've always wanted to give you the very best tools, the very best understandings, and the simplest, fastest, most direct way to get the results that you want. That's always been my goal here at what we've come to call Planet David. And we want to make sure that you're safe. And when I say safe, I mean that you have the choice in any given situation or circumstance of how you're going to respond, as opposed to those choices being dictated for you under the illusion that you're actually making it. Okay. So that being said, I love questions. The better I was raised in an environment, in a culture that basically said, my sensei used to say, the better the question, the better the seminar. That being said, we have a lot of material. If this is the scope of everything there is to cover in the context of persuasion in general, but even in predatory persuasion, the field is huge. I have time for this. So here's my promise. Here's my commitment to you as your guide, your mentor, your friend, your teacher today. I'm going to take you as far down this persuasion or anti-persuasion rabbit hole as I can. I'm going to show you and give you some of the things that I think will move the needle for you in a very powerful, very direct way that'll give you more advantages in your life. And I will point you in the direction of where to go to get access to our complete system and our methodologies of training. It's an offer that's always tied. There's always going to be an offer tied to a class that we teach. Why? Because we can't teach you everything in a 90-minute or 2-hour webinar. It just isn't possible. But people who gravitate to these materials, they always want more. And so we don't serve you if we don't show you how to get access to it. So that's how we're going to do that. I'm going to teach you, I'm going to take you down this rabbit hole. I'm going to give you some really cool, powerful, useful stuff that you can put into action right away. I'm going to show you where to go for the next piece. Is that fair? If you think that's fair, type that in the chat. I know I'm talking 100 miles an hour. I haven't even had coffee today. You believe this? More than Delilah says. Perfect. Yes, Buddha Taijutsu is the mind on this. A lot of people talk about ninjutsu on our YouTube channel. It's kind of interesting. All right. So what we're going to talk about today. I only saw one hand. Are you guys okay with me going deep and showing you where to go for more or not? Go ahead and type it in the chat for me. I am basically insecure and I thrive on feedback. So the more active you are in the chat, the more I like it. That being said, if this is your first time in Planet David, type your name, where you're checking in from, and what you most want to learn or take away from today's webinar. If you're a veteran of Planet David, type in your name, how long you've been in Planet David, and what you would like to learn. And if at some point during the webinar your a question comes up and I don't answer it or I don't see it, but you have experience from using our technologies, you can veterans. I ask you to go ahead and reach out to those people without distracting them from the webinar and answer the questions. Right? Everybody helps each other here at Planet David. It's just how we roll. All right. So our YouTubers are all on board. I love questions. So there's a question about split personality and mind control. Yes, I know quite a bit about it, as a matter of fact. Spent a lot of time studying that stuff to figure out how to fix it. All right. All right. So let's talk about the aberrant psychology of sociopaths and narcissists. We're also going to talk about something that's really important, and that is the 20 characteristics that put you on the hit list for predatory persuasion. There's about 20 of them that are not characterological, but they're circumstantial. And that's one of the things we want to talk about in this training, especially, is that a lot of smart people, hold on a second, I just realized my microphone wasn't set up. A lot of smart people get taken advantage of. Being gullible is an aspect, of course, not taking the time to do your research when it comes to messages that you're being given is absolutely a factor. So there is an intelligence thing that can be a factor, but what you'll find is that even highly intelligent, highly resourced people often find themselves taken in. And one of the reasons is that there's two types of vulnerability that we have to think about when we're looking at whether we're somebody who's likely to be targeted or not. And that is simply this: circumstantial things and characterological things. So we can go two different, we're at the kind of the fork in the road now. We can talk about predatory psychology, or we can go right into the 20 characteristics that make you vulnerable to persuasion. Which would you guys like to do? Go ahead and type that in the chat. Bueller? All right. In that case, let's go ahead. Oh, I got one more down here. Predatory psychology. Okay, we can do that. All right, let's talk about that then. Let me find my notes here for you guys. I don't like PowerPoints, so very often I'll pull up the PowerPoint and I'll just talk from it as opposed to showing it to you. I'd much rather you see my face because I'll keep your attention better. So let's talk about narcissists, sociopaths, and Machiavellians and psychopaths. So all of these people would be considered predatory. But before we go any further into predatory psychology, let's get some definitions, okay, out of the way so we can understand where do we draw the line. So predatory psychology, to me, is about creating intensely negative states in people, eliminating choices, or controlling the illusions of choices, so that people choose to do things that are not in their best interest. It involves any type of deception or misrepresentation. So to me, any type of communication that misleads you, that causes you to do things that are not in your best interests, that is coercive in any way, or just deceptive. To me, that's where you pass from benevolent persuasion or selfish persuasion into the art and science of dark persuasion. The systems I've spent the last 20 to 30 years developing do not require you to ever do any of those things. That's the beauty of our systems, is that it's always about finding out what the person really wants, how they know they're getting it, deciding if you can fulfill those needs, and then presenting that offer to them in such a way that they recognize that they're getting exactly what they want and you can actually deliver on it. So if at any moment you're using our technologies and that is not the case, now I do recognize that there are some applications where a win-win, which is what we like to go for, is simply not possible. Interrogations, for example, or courts, courtroom settings, things of that nature, where a definitive win-lose scenario is in place. Sometimes those things are necessary in a intelligence type of a situation where you have to get information from the bad guy, right? I understand those applications, but for the vast majority of us, that's not the life we live. Okay. And so understanding those tools is important, even if we may never use them, because at some point, somebody will try to use them against you. It's not a question in our society, in our current social media driven world. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so I want to be very clear that I'm a big believer in the applied use of persuasion and influence, but I also I have a strong belief in the ethical use of these techniques and tools, because it's not necessary for the vast majority of applications that human beings do. Getting somebody to like you, getting somebody to take out the trash, looking at you as a leader, right? All of these applications are very, very benevolent and noble causes, but they do use persuasion, and we need to understand that we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater when we're studying persuasion. If you want to be really, really effective, and I say this from the heart, if you want to be really, really effective in your ability to protect yourself from dark persuasion or negative persuasion or coercive persuasion, then you must be good at persuasion. You must learn both sides of the coin, because if you can't do it, you can't perceive it. And the best predators out there take an awful, awful lot of time looking like the best guys out there, the best girls out there. Okay. In fact, that brings us to probably something that I don't usually talk about because it's kind of scary, but I'll bring, it's a big picture thing. And so we'll get into this. All social predators follow basically a 5-phase formula. Now, this formula was first identified, at least to me, by a woman named Dr. Wendy Patrick, who was an assistant deputy district attorney for the county of San Diego, in charge of sex crimes. She wrote a great book, which I highly recommend. It's called Red Flags. And she talks about what she calls the psychology of attraction process. But it's a very, very aggressive, very, very powerful methodology that highly advanced predators use to create very powerful emotional addictions to people. So the first phase of that is called proactivity. All social predators, whether they're conscious of it or not, are highly proactive. What does that actually mean? That means they profile their victims. They take the time to think about who they want to target, where those people hang out, what their hot buttons are, and how to create in themselves an image or impression of the exact thing that appeals most to that particular type of person. Okay. So the proactivity aspect that predators use is almost the same kind of a process that forensic profilers might use, or law enforcement people or military people when they're trying to profile who's going to be a terrorist. So there is this, remember, we're talking about a tool. We're not talking about the target or the context, right? And that's the problem that a lot of us are going to have. I'm going to be very, very transparent with you guys. This is a place where you must be willing to actually apply what you know. Okay. One of the things that happens with, and I saw this in the martial arts, and I saw it especially in the persuasion arts. There was something, I think it was Napoleon, who called it the will to conquest, or the will, in our case, the will to confront. Knowing these techniques is not enough. Being able to recognize these techniques is not enough. You must be willing to apply these techniques. You understand that? If all you do is just learn these things and never use them, even when you see them, and you never do anything about it. You might as well just click away now and not watch the rest of the webinar. So here's my first ask. If I take the time to teach you these things, will you do something with them? Will you take the actions? Will you confront when appropriate? Will you do what you need to do? I know the vast majority of you won't. Right? And I'm not saying that as in a derogatory or judgmental way. It's from observation. No one's coming to save you but you. I can give you tools. I can tell you what to do. I can tell you how to do it. I can even provide opportunities for you to practice it. But at the end of the day, out there in the real world, when push comes to shove, not just can you do it, are you willing to do it? If you're willing to take that step, to do whatever it takes, to go to the next level, whatever it is, go ahead and type that in the chat for me. Just let me know. That's really going to kind of inform how I teach the webinar. All right. So let me finish the perfect. I think I will. Okay, we need to work on that, Delilah. All right. Now, this is a kind of a heavy topic, so I'm going to try and be a little bit more fun-loving and easygoing as I can, but it's kind of a downer sometimes. But this is important stuff, and I really hope that you guys come away with a willingness and ability to actually apply these techniques. So let's finish the predator protocol, what I call the predator protocol. So profiling is really big in the proactive phase of the psychology of attraction formula. After that is what we call identification phase. So what does that mean? The person or the people have looked at what they want to accomplish, who their optimal target is. Now they create an identity. In covert operations, I think the term in tradecraft, I think it's called a legend, like a whole identity. You know, if you were a spy or something like that, you'd have a passport, you'd have a backstory, and you have all these documents that support this version of yourself that you're presenting, right? Predators are going to do that, right? They're going to be social engineers, right? They're going to present an identity that is emotionally appealing to the target. And that's the third phase of the predator protocol, emotional appeal. Everything about the identity that the person's created is based on the profile. They create the identity. That identity has emotional appeal to the target. Now what do? They create massive credibility in that person's mind through credentialing, through their position, through guidance, teaching, mentoring, whatever it is. They create credibility. They maybe prove that they're just like that person by doing something they did and get into trouble for it the same way. They'll do something to simulate sameness so that this person looks at them as somebody who's credible. Okay. Once that happens, the affirmation starts. Now, the affirmation phase is probably one of the most seductive aspects of the predator protocol, because every human being on the planet, and when we get into predatory psychology or we get into victimology, you'll understand how this is a factor. Every human being on the planet is desperate for validation and support. They're desperate for somebody to approve of them, to welcome them, to make them feel part of. Most of us are terrified in one form or another of being the outcast or feeling like the other. Right? If you've ever been in a situation where you didn't feel like you fit in and you really wanted to, type that in the chat. Yep. Right? This is our Achilles heel. One of the reasons that we're so desperate for this kind of validation is because it's not a part of our everyday socialization, but it is a part of our biology. We're desperate for it most of the time. Whitney says, yeah. Okay. If you ever want to go deeper into this, there's a great book by Dr. I don't know if he's a doctor. His name is Jack Schaefer, and he wrote a book, several books, as a matter of fact. It's called The Like Switch, and one of the things he talks about is the golden rule of friendship. Now, Mr. Schaefer and a bunch of his colleagues are all high-level counterespionage, FBI, CIA, DEA operatives. They do interrogations and covert operations and counterespionage for a living. So these guys kind of know what they're talking about because they're out there putting it on the line. And one of the things he says is this. He says, people like people who make them feel good about themselves. When you say that two more times so you get it. People like people who make them feel good about themselves. Okay? So this is, again, it's a natural human need, right? There's no human being on the planet, unless they're completely sociopathic or something along those lines, that is not desperate for some form of validation. So many of the tactics that you will see predator or persuasion predators use targets that need. It targets that need for recognition, for acceptance, for validation. Now, there are certain populations that are more easily manipulated than others. Okay, and those we're going to be talking about in our segment on victimology. Okay, so that's the persuasion or the predator protocol, as I call it. Right, I think Dr. Patrick calls it the psychology of attraction, which I don't like. I don't like that term because it gives attraction a bad rap. Right? In my world, I call it the predator protocol. Right? If I'm teaching covert influence, I'll call it the human angel protocol. Right? Why would I say that? Because when you apply that formula with a human being, they think the sun rises and sets on you. They literally become emotionally addicted to you. And that's the danger. It creates what we call in psychology and in behavioral influence an imbalanced power dynamic. Right? And the more imbalanced the power dynamic, the more suggestible the target of that dynamic becomes. Right? And this is important to understand. A lot of persuasion predators target people in highly suggestible states or at highly suggestible moments in their life. Okay? Any form of trauma creates what we call a dissociative state in a human being. Dissociative states are highly hypnotically influenced. They're easy to influence people in a dissociative state. Most types of hypnosis involve some degree of association or dissociation. So before I go any further, what questions do you have about what we've covered so far? So John says, I find myself accidentally making people like me too much and then find myself unable to disengage because of sympathy. Ah, that goes back to your boundaries and your willingness to state your rules. None, I've been clear. Perfect. Okay, so just to recap, manipulative persuasion is any form of persuasion that eliminates choices, gives you the illusion that you don't have a choice, is deceptive, coercive, or emphasizes the installation of negative feelings in any way. It leads to a win-lose dynamic. That's how we define predatory persuasion here. Okay. Win-win persuasion or positive persuasion is any form of communication that gives you choices, is in alignment with the person's values, demonstrates that you're going to get everything you want in a way that you recognize that you're getting it, and it's completely honest and above board. Okay. That's and understand you're not going to evade persuasion messaging, and the messaging that you'll receive will be on both sides of that line. Some people's lines, they don't have one, and that's the problem. All right, so let's talk about the four basic predatory types that we talk about a lot in just about anything. Okay, so Whitney is saying the narcissist in my life grabbed me when I was at one of my lowest points. He pretended to be everything he thought I wasn't. Perfect. Let's talk about that, not directly with in Whitney's case, but let's to use the N word, and that's the word I wanted to talk about first. So the four basic types that in most of the books that I've studied are the narcissist, the sociopath, the Machiavellian, and the psychopath. So three times: narcissist, sociopath, Machiavellian, psychopath. Let's talk about the N word first, because this is the one that causes so many problems for us. And a lot of times the problems are self-made. In other words, when I see clients on a pretty regular basis. In fact, if anybody needs client work, you can just email me at David at NLP Power. or you can go to my website, davidsnyder.com, and sign up for a 30-minute consultation. We offer all prospective clients a free 30-minute consult to see if your case is a fit for our methods. If after you pass our screening, we determine that your case is a fit for our methods, then we'll discuss strategies and tactics for getting your situation handled in the shortest amount of time possible. When you're ready to schedule your 30-minute consultation, go to davidsnyder.com, go to coaching, and fill out the little form, and we'll get you in the pipeline, and we'll see if we can actually help you. And if we can't help you, we will. If we can't help you, we'll tell you that too. Back to our regularly scheduled program. The narcissist, or narcissism, is not one thing. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. And that's the problem, is we are so quick to label anybody who injures us or causes us pain in any way as a narcissist. Now, does that mean they're not a narcissist? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that their degree of narcissism is highly subjective. Most people, and every human being who is normally socialized, has a narcissistic streak. We love to talk about ourselves. We love to have why do we love taking evaluations and quizzes about our personality and our body type and who our best our perfect mate is and all these things? Because we're fascinated by ourselves. Okay? It's when that narcissism goes beyond a certain level that it becomes pathological, as some say, a clinical narcissist. So narcissism from a highly again, my uniquely warped perspective. Narcissism falls into two basic categories that I see a lot in my world. One is grandiose narcissism, which is the one we think of most of the time. Grandiose narcissism is, it's all about me. Look at what I did. If something went wrong, you screwed this up. If you'd have done what I told you to do, the way I told you to do it, if I'd have been managing that, it'd have worked right, right? If something goes wrong, it's the other person's fault. Everything centers around this person and how it relates to them or how they were involved in it, right? This is grandiose narcissism. This is somebody who has such a big hole in their heart that no amount of validation is enough to fix it. But they're puffed up. They're always posturing, right? This is what we think of when we think of the narcissist. But there are other forms of covert narcissism as well. And covert narcissism is also a highly self-centered expression, but it's almost always victimish. Everybody did this. They did this to me. They did that to me. They're out to get me. It has a persecution complex. Everything centers and targets them, but it's negative, right? And so one of the interesting things, because I do a lot of clinical work, I often see that some of my clients and covert narcissists are more likely to seek out help than overt narcissists or grandiose narcissists. But what's interesting is every time I've had somebody with a strong covert narcissism streak in my chair, they almost always have at least one highly narcissistic parent, like grandiose narcissism. It's interesting how that flips like that, right? But that's a different class for a different day. So narcissism is always about self-centered, but it doesn't mean, this is where it's important. It doesn't mean they're evil. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're radically, undeniably, disgustingly full of themselves for whatever reason. And so we need to understand that while narcissism can be a problem, it's not necessarily an indictment of being a bad person. In fact, one of the interesting things about narcissists in terms of how other people look at them, the narcissists in general are actually quite likable, especially at the beginning. And in Dr. Patrick's book, Red Flag, she talks about that even when people know the person's a narcissist, they often find them quite likable. So narcissists actually know how to endear themselves to people, right? And it's not, you don't usually see the pathological side until you tell them no, which we'll talk about, or they're in a position of executive authority where they don't have to be nice anymore. And that's one of the things we need to talk about. There's a great book. It's been around for at least 10, 15 years. It's called Power Cues by Neil Morgan. I think it's Neil Morgan. Power Cues. Excellent book on what we call influence, or different types of influence. And one of the things I see with narcissists particularly is they're good at playing the people game. They're not quite as good as Machiavellians, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Um, but they're really good at getting people to like them and do things for them. Um, so again, while they're not necessarily bad people, they are highly manipulative, right? They are able to get people to do things. Okay. So any questions on the narcissist before I move on to sociopathy? So Ryan says, I worry about my nephews. Their dad is either a narcissist or he's avoidant borderline. Their mom is either narcissist or psychopath. Her mother is in their house also, and she's a lifelong moocher, communal narcissist. Okay. All right. So I don't know enough about your situation to really comment, Ryan, but I will tell you that when we talk about psychopathy, you won't actually find psychopathy in the DSM-5, unless I'm mistaken. Psychopathy doesn't exist that I know of as an actual diagnosis. Now, what there are different forms of psychopathy. Like borderline is a psychopathy. Um, Manic depressive is a psychopathy. It's a mental disorder, right? So, but there are certain characteristics that psychopathic people have that makes them dangerous. Okay. So Lars Delana Bosch. Okay. David, I found your content really useful lately, and I really want to thank you for that. Well, Lars, you're very, very welcome. It's my pleasure. All right, let's talk about sociopathy. Now, sociopathy, let me see if I can find my notes on sociopathy really quick. Are usually people, my notes, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Don't mind me. I've just got 27 windows open and I got to figure out which one is your guys. All right. Well, I'll just go off the top of my head then for whatever reason. I can't seem to find the notes. Um, Sociopathy has an impaired consciousness. That's now in the book by George K. Simon. He calls people who exhibit narcissistic, sociopathic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic traits as character disturbed. So one of the things that and is a hallmark of sociopathy is an impaired consciousness, impaired conscience. They don't see things. They don't see the world the way we do. Now, one of the things that's interesting in Simon's work is that he talks about narcissists in a very different or sociopaths in a very different way, especially antisocial personality disorder. He looks at people with this kind of malady as people who understand right from wrong. They're not damaged in the sense that they had all this trauma and so they're hurting they're acting out of hurt. And by the way, this is where we move away from the idealistic portion of the training and move into the practical portion of the training. When you're dealing with any of these four personality types, the narcissist, the grandiose one, the sociopath, the Machiavellian, the psychopath, or any form of abuser in any way, shape, or form, the last thing you want to do is think of them as injured or damaged or in need of help in some way. Now, that seems like, especially from a guy who does therapy for a living, that seems like a really, really, really heartless, almost sociopathic um, way to go with this. The reason is this: people who are operating from that particular psychopathy, that particular mindset, they not only understand right from wrong, they don't like it. They look at it as stupid. They think it doesn't apply to them. They think only sheep should be able to do that. And anybody who shows mercy or kindness deserves what happens to them. Do you understand that? It doesn't. Now, here's the thing I want you to get, and I want you to be really clear with this. It doesn't matter how they got this way. It does not matter how they got this way. They're this way. And any form of compassion that you show is far more likely to be used against you than to actually make a difference in this person. These people only understand power. They only understand consequences. But even that is transitory. It's transient. If you get somebody, you get one of these people and you catch them doing something bad, and you put them through all this rehab and all this other stuff, and you sit them down, you say, "Are you sorry?" They'll say yes. But what they're really saying is, "I'm sorry you caught me." Not, "I'm sorry for what I did." Right? There's a term that Simon talks about in his book called couch trained. And couch trained is somebody who's been run through the system so many times, through so many different therapists, that they know exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to say it to get the therapist or the clinician or the social worker to sign off on their programs. Okay? They know, I know this, it's been documented. Some of the worst serial killers in history so endeared themselves to the people in the facility that and became so trusted by them that the doctors who were supposed to be administering the treatment gave them access to the tests that they use to administer to determine if somebody's sane or not. Right? This document, this has happened. Right? If you go to Netflix, there's or maybe it's not Netflix. It's the Great Courses. There's a whole lecture series on sociopathy and psychopaths and famous serial killers. And one of the stories in that is exactly that. A guy who, at a very young age, knew exactly what to say. He came across very, very unoffensive, very, very mild, very, very repentant. He fooled the doctors. They made him a trustee. They gave him a key to where the tests are kept, and he memorized all the questions. And then they let him out, and he went on a killing spree that lasted for years. Right? Again, I'm not advocating being cruel. I'm not advocating being mean. I'm not advocating that these people don't need help. But there's huge probability that the person they need help from is not you. And they will see anything that you do, any leeway that you give them, any compassion, any wiggle room, any hesitancy, as a sign of weakness. And when predators see weakness, they pounce. Okay, so sociopathy is often characterized by bad impulse control. They're very, very impulsive. They're often highly sensation seeking, so they're always looking for the next dopamine rush. They usually are very transitory. In other words, a lot of them move from place to place to place, especially the highly predatory ones. Very nomadic. They don't put down roots. They don't create long-lasting connections with people. They see people as objects to be manipulated and discarded, assets, basically, right? They're also very sensation driven or sensation seeking. So what does that really mean? They love adrenaline. They love dopamine. They love anything that alters their state. So it's not uncommon for people who are high on the sociopathic spectrum to be involved in extreme activities, drag racing, drug addictions, wild sex parties, things of that. They tend to live very extreme lifestyles. Okay, they tend to lead and they don't think about the consequences of their actions. Okay, they're very good, especially the really sick ones, the ones that are really, really far along on the sociopathic spectrum. They're actually really, really good at faking emotions they don't know, they don't feel. So they can look at you and they can profile you very, very quickly. They can look at your nonverbals, they can look at your body language, the way you speak, listen to the way you speak, and they can interpret that and create a facade that mirrors what you expect them to, or what they believe you would expect them to respond with, even though they're not feeling it. Okay. You'll often, especially if you catch them doing something, or you're sitting them down and you're explaining, and you're getting them to explain themselves, they'll use a term called OLTA, which it's slang. It means one thing led to another. They'll always find a way to extend the agency. In other words, they're not responsible for what they did. The other person's responsible. This is the classic, well, she has asking for it. She was wearing a short skirt, right? That's the classic one thing led to another. It's the other person's responsibility. So sociopathy is almost always, that's one of the big hallmarks, is an avoidance of responsibility. Okay. Avoidance, yeah. Goliath says mercy equals ideal prey. Yes, in many cases it does. So that's the sociopath. Now, What's interesting is that um, each of the subsequent categories I'm relating to you includes the previous one. So sociopaths are almost always narcissistic, but not all narcissists are sociopaths. You see the difference? I have a lot of good friends who are really big narcissists. Some of the most caring, kindest people you know. You know why? They love to be the hero, right? And they legitimately feel bad when their friends or their loved ones hurt, but they're all about themselves, right? Sociopath will mimic all that, and they'll be narcissistic, but they won't care nearly. They'll put on a good show. All right. So the next one on our list is the Machiavellian. Now, the Machiavellian of of all four categories of predatory psychology, I think the Machiavellian is probably the rarest, but also potentially the most dangerous because they're not only sociopathic and narcissistic, they're extraordinarily smart and attentive and aware. These people know how to say just the right thing at just the right time. They have this ability to almost take a snapshot. If you guys, how many of you guys have ever read the book Blink by Malcolm Gladwell? Anybody? If you haven't read it, it's a really good book to go back and read. A lot of these people have this ability to just take an instant psychological snapshot of a person and from there extrapolate a whole strategy that gets them from position over here to position over here and bringing them a long way. So they're extraordinarily strategic, extraordinarily manipulative. They have no problem with lying and deceiving people, um, and they're the hardest ones to catch, in my opinion. The hardest ones to catch because they're just there's no rule, there's no boundary, right? They can be sociopathic, by the way. Now, when you have Machiavellianism, sociopathy, and narcissism together, you get what is commonly referred to in the psychological fields and the behavioral sciences fields and law enforcement as the dark triad. The dark triad is sociopathy, narcissism, and I think it's Machiavellianism, but it could be psychopathy. Um, Psychopaths are a slightly different animal in that they live in a different world. They live in a different world than the rest of us do. A lot of psychopaths um, see the world through a lens that, again, they think of themselves as recipients of all things. They deserve everything. Everybody else is an object. Nobody's really a human being. But there's a different world that they live in, right? And the rules of that world are theirs, and nobody else matters. And they will be highly sociopathic. They will be, in many cases, extraordinarily manipulative um, and narcissistic. Um, but psychopathy itself is characterized. Let me see if I can find my notes again. Where did they go? Here they go. There are 9 basic characteristics that a psychopath expresses or exhibits that kind of sort of separates them a little bit from the pack. So, first of all, psychopaths have a more sadistic nature. In other words, they enjoy hurting, they enjoy cruelty, they enjoy inspiring fear and loathing. These other 3 types, they're not necessarily that way. If getting you to do what they want is to make you feel extraordinarily happy, they'll do it, right? They won't necessarily take huge amounts of pleasure in causing you pain. It's more of a utilitarian approach. Whereas these people, the psychopaths of the world, they love it. They derive all forms of gratification from it. And so this is one of the things that we want to look at. Is there somebody that maybe has a narcissistic side and a sociopathic side and seems to be, but do they revel? Do they seem to really enjoy other people's pain, either directly or indirectly, right? Something to be on the lookout for. They're often quite glib and they're very charming superficially, just like all the rest of our character disturbed individuals. These people know exactly how to turn on the charm, the charisma. In fact, in a face reading class, I was teaching the difference between the different types of charisma, and there's certain types of charisma that sociopaths have and psychopaths have. And I was going through some of the serial killers, and I was showing the difference between Ted Bundy and what's the guy, the Night Stalker?
Um, I forget what is Hernandez, I think it's his name, and they're two very different energies. You look at Bundy, has a very bright, very cold energy to him. When you can see it behind the eyes, you can see it under the skin. It's very attractive, but there's no warmth or animus there. It's very, very, so think of like a bright light attracting moths, but no real warmth. Then you look at someone like Ramirez, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and you look at him, and there's a darkness in his energy. There's a darkness in his eyes that pulls you in like a deep pool, and that's what we call anti-Shen, right? And it's very hypnotic. It's very seductive. Both are very seductive, but they're very different energies. But you'll see these extensively in people who exhibit psychopathic tendencies. You'll see sociopathy will have colder Shen more often. You won't see a lot. You won't see a lot of. I haven't seen yet anyway. A lot of dark Shen in sociopaths. I see that in psychopaths though. So, so I'm just putting that for those of you who've done our face reading classes and have been through some of that stuff. This makes sense. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, you might want to get a copy of our face reading for fun and profit programs. They're really good to help you learn how to do the profiling and the personality assessments on the fly out in the field. Um, they tend to be pathologically deceptive. In other words, they lie because they can. They can't not lie, right? Again, contrast that with someone who's narcissistic, who maybe blows things out of proportion, as opposed to somebody who feels compelled not to tell the truth, right? They tend to live just like our sociopaths. They tend to live parasitic lifestyles. They're quite cunning and manipulative. Usually, most of the people who exhibit some form of psychopathy are diagnosed with early behavioral problems. A lot of times it's torturing small animals or things like that. Okay. And they have absolutely zero remorse, no guilt, and they're remarkably able to rationalize their behaviors. Okay. So the signs of a psychopath: sadistic nature, motivates through fear and other than respect, you intend to destroy rather than correct. They're glib and constantly turn on superficial charm. They're masters of presenting themselves very, very well. They're good at what Wendy Patrick calls impression management. They have a grandiose estimation of themselves. They see themselves as the most important thing in the world. Nothing else matters. They're pathologically deceptive. They live parasitic lifestyles. They had early behavioral problems and show no remorse or guilt. Anti-personality disorder, again, we're going to step it now. That's the extreme. Now we're going to one level below that. Lack of empathy. When they hurt others, they tend not to feel shame or guilt or remorse for their actions. They lack the ability to place themselves in someone else's shoes. This is a big one. Um, there's a lot of people out there who are, in their own way, so self centered that they don't know actually how to see the world from somebody else's perspective, right? And I don't know that, to be honest, I don't know that sociopaths can't do that. I just believe they choose not to. Because sociopaths are really, really good at mimicking emotion. In order to do that, you have to be able to, at least to some degree, understand what's happening. But do they feel the things that the other person's feeling or the way we feel them? No, usually not. Um, some of them, my teacher Lillian used to say that some sociopaths can. Some can turn it on and off very selectively. Like if there's someone that they decide they care about, um, they'll exhibit all kinds of emotion towards that person, but they can turn it off like a switch, right? Okay. Let's see here. I think I've covered. Well, let me just give you the long list of sociopathy. Um, so they're cold in nature due to their limited ability to experience emotional empathy, and sociopaths may come across as cold. They're extremely narcissistic. They can be quite charming. They're manipulative. Charming behavior has a purpose to help them lure others into their web so that they can take whatever they want. They engage in risky behaviors. Again, I've covered some of this before, so a lot of it's review. They love sensation. They're prone to sensation. So they'll do things like alcohol abuse and drug abuse, compulsive gambling, dangerous hobbies, extreme sports, drag racing. Um, they don't like laws. They just have a real problem conforming to social norms because they don't think those rules apply to them. They're impulsive, they're irresponsible, often quite deceitful. They usually have poor social relationships. Sociopaths are unable to form personal relationships. They can form the appearance of a personal relationship, but they're highly transactional. So Namisha's asking, can autistic people be narcissistic? I do. I think anyone can be narcissistic. The question is it a problem? Right? But do I know for a fact that autistic people can be narcissistic? No, I don't know that. But I do know every human nervous system is inherently selfish, and that creates the potential for narcissism to some degree in every human being. They're often quite arrogant, not non-autistic people, but sociopaths. They can usually maintain a very profound sense of calm in very volatile situations because they're not as easily triggered by emotion. They don't see it. Um, okay. Questions about that? Questions about predatory psychology? How many of you found at least one or two people in this list that you recognize? Everyone has a little narcissism. That's true. Well, this is me. All right. So let's talk about a little bit about victimology. So what we'll do now is we're coming up to the top of the hour. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to start the list and talk about the difference between circumstantial victims and characterological victims, which I think it's important to have a distinction. Because one of the things that happens is you understand that even smart people get taken in. Even smart people are able to be victimized, but a lot of times it's circumstantial, right? Let me look at my notes here. Okay. So in my notes, look at this really quick. Those are the wrong notes. That's all right. I'm gonna share my screen with you guys here really quick. Okay. So the first thing that can put you on the victims list, and this when I talk about vulnerability, what I'm talking about is suggestibility. Suggestibility is any character trait or environmental phenomena that can trigger a dissociative state inside of you. Dissociative states are hypnagogic in nature. The highest degree of dissociation creates the highest degree of suggestibility. So, what's the first thing on the list? SSRIs. So, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They're prescriptions. If you've had one of these prescriptions very recently, this can make you more vulnerable to suggestion. It can make you more vulnerable to predatory influence. If you've had a recent death in the family, right? Anytime we have a loss, we've experienced some form of traumatic loss of any kind, real or imagined, we become more suggestible. History of mental illness. These people who are regularly experiencing dissociative states of some kind or another, very, very susceptible to predatory manipulations. Recent divorce or end of relationship. Okay. One of the things that happens when you're dealing with a relationship is you become progressively more identified with the relationship. Now, one of the hallmarks of our technologies, the thing that we're constantly coming back to in everything that we teach, is this concept of identity, what it means, how it works, why we need it, why we want to dissolve it, why we want to customize it. Everything about Planet David circles around what we call the identification principle. We create an identity that we believe is a container for who we are and who we want to be, what we deserve and what we don't. And we move through the world projecting the rules of that identity onto everyone around us. And we assume that they're going to be in harmony with that as well. But the truth of an identity is it's nothing but a set of beliefs that you've created that are extraordinarily malleable. And if you understand how to undermine the building blocks of a person's identity, you can make them believe whatever you want. You can get them to pretty much do whatever you want. In fact, that's how most predatory activities work. They start by seducing and then destroying. First, they seduce you into a relationship, and then they systematically dissolve, undermine, and isolate you from everything that supports the identity you've created that you're comfortable with, until there's nothing left but the identity that this person has created for you. And that in order for you to maintain that source of sustenance emotionally, physically, financially, whatever, you have to step into that identity, and it becomes how you act and behave. So the undermining of identity is one of the most important factors in whether you become a victim of predatory psychology or triumph over it. One of the things that happens is that we're constantly bonding with people. So when we get into a relationship with somebody, what happens is we have me, we have you. Eventually, me and you become we. That becomes an identity. You don't know who you are without the other person. Now, that's to a greater or lesser degree pretty much unavoidable in any relationship, whether it's codependent or otherwise. But to the degree that this happens is also the degree of trauma you'll experience when it goes away. And so this is why many times when a person loses something they've become identified with, a person, a relationship, a job, everything else in their life starts to suffer as well. It just completely breaks down. How many of you know of at least one person in your life who lost their marriage and then got fired, or lost their job, or just completely left everything that made them who they were? How many of you, the same thing happened where you lost a job and the relationship dissolved and went away? Why? Because your identity took a hit that you couldn't recover from. And it created a domino effect where everything else started to unravel as well. When we no longer know who we are, we go into survival mode. When we go into survival mode, we adopt whatever norms and rules that are available that we believe lead to safety. And usually the most direct route to safety is the tip of the sword being extended to you by the predator. But you're drowning, you're desperate, you don't know who you'll be without it, your body doesn't want to die physically, mentally, emotionally, and so you grab the tip of the sword, and even though it's hurting you to hold on, it's all you got, so that's what you do. Again, I'm using maybe an imperfect metaphor, but I hope it's landing. Right? Is this helpful? Is this useful? True, not true? Yes. Okay, good. All right. So that's about the first 5 or 6 of the list. So with your permission, let me get something about this really quick. I told you I would take you as far as I can in the time that we have, and I point you where to go to get the rest. Now, the things I'm sharing with you come from my Killer Influence and Defense Against the Dark Arts programs. We have a 5-day event coming up, actually in August 18th to the 22nd. It's a virtual training, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But the things I'm giving you are pieces of a much more comprehensive, much more robust, powerful system for getting what you want in life and being the good guy and keeping the bad guys away and putting them out of your misery, for lack of a better word. So what I'd like to do now, if it's okay, is I would like to show you and talk to you a little bit about the programs that we put together, what we've got coming up, and how to get access to deeper trainings. When we come back from that, I'd like to take a moment and finish this victimology list, and I'd like to show you 1 or 2 quick techniques that you can use, to identify the predator during normal conversation, and how to derail them when you start to detect predatory behaviors. Would that be okay? Would that be useful? This means yes. This means no. Type that in the chat. Please, Delilah says. Okay, great. Now, I'm going to hold you to your word on this. You guys told me you would actually do something with this stuff. So I'm hoping that that's true. All right, let's go ahead and let me jump to the few times I actually use a PowerPoint. Drum roll, please. With your permission, I'd like to present to you the Weapons of Social Seduction, Defense Against the Dark Arts of Persuasion and Manipulation home study course. This course is all about taking your life to the next level. It's about how to make more money and not lose your soul, how to close more deals without getting taken in return. It's about how to get more dates without worrying about whether this person is going to steal all your cash and rape your dog and do all kinds of crazy things. It's about helping more people without becoming a victim yourself. It's how to feel more confident and know with a high degree of certainty when to hold them and when to fold them, as the great Kenny Rogers used to say. When to leave, know when to walk, know when to run. Right? It's about becoming more personally powerful in your life without necessarily becoming more cruel. But it's about making just better decisions in your life and how to win the game of life in a much more um, safe way, a way to stay safe and still move through the world, getting the things you really want. As a byproduct of this, you'll become more charming, charismatic, and irresistible. Right? Um, so here's what I put together. This is a great offer, and it's available until August 4th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. today. And it's going to include our Secrets of Human Influence home study course, which is a version of our award-winning Killer Influence Secrets of Covert Hypnosis training. Again, remember, if you're going to protect yourself against predatory influence, you must first understand how influence works, how it's delivered, so that you can return fire or avoid the shots aimed at you when appropriate. If you don't have the will to respond or the ability to recognize an attack, you won't know how to deliver an attack. If you don't know how to deliver an attack, it's very hard to recognize one. It's circular that way. Okay. This is going to teach you step by step how to think like a master of influence. In other words, how do people who use persuasion strategically every single day to get the things they want, how do they think? How is that different from the rest of the human population? And why is it different? What's the advantage of that? What's the disadvantage of that? We're going to give you an in-depth understanding of what to think and how to think it, so that every time you enter an interaction with people, you're going to have a very, very profound understanding of what you want in the shortest route to get there, so that everybody comes away with the thing they most need and want from that interaction, and how to get away from the people who are looking to create a win-lose scenario, right? It's all about win-win in our world. We're going to teach you one of the most important fail-safe mechanisms on the planet for defending yourself against predatory psychology, and that is how to control your own psycho-emotional state so no one else can do it. So in our world, in our trainings, in our teachings, the ability to enter or exit any psycho-emotional state on demand at will is a fundamental super Jedi power. And once you master it, you'll not only be able to use it to influence people in the way you want, you'll also be able to protect yourself in a very profound way from anybody trying to use your emotions against you. At the beginning of the training, we talked about if you ever come away feeling like somebody pressed the right buttons and manipulated you into doing something you didn't want to do, this is going to make sure that those people can never push your buttons ever again. Okay? It's extraordinarily important. In fact, one of the things I've discovered of doing this for almost 30 years is that the state control training that you receive just keeps getting stronger, and it starts to allow you to do other things. When I started teaching state control, it was all in the context of getting people to like you, love you, follow your lead. Then it was all about not having people push your buttons and being safe and being immune to predations, right? My super advanced students are now using state control. Spoiler alert, they're actually using it to do psychokinesis and stick things to walls. They're using state control as an ability to put on a blindfold, touch a piece of paper without looking at it and know what color it is. One of the things I used to say, and if you go back over my early videos, I only say that neuroplasticity never stops developing. Well, once you develop a certain level of neuroplasticity, all these different abilities start coming online. Now, that's not the purview of this class. That's not what I'm talking about. But I can't emphasize enough that if all you ever learned from me was the ability to do the state control the way we teach it, your entire life would change for the better and it would never get worse. Because there's no place in our lives where state control doesn't make things better. Okay, so I'm just putting that out there. From there, you learn how to do what we call power rapport skills for connecting with anyone, anytime, anywhere. We're going to teach you irresistible hypnotic language patterns. These are the most powerful language patterns that exist. We'll explain to you how they work, and why they can't be resisted. We're going to teach you how to hijack someone's own internal behavior code. Every single behavior a human being generates has a firing sequence to it, like a combination lock. If you understand that combination and you know how to express that combination, then people will start to do what you want very, very, very consistently. Now, from a social defense perspective, understand that every behavior people has a code. So you'll be able to become extraordinarily skilled at recognizing patterns in other people. And that's what you need if you want to be a defender against the dark arts. You must be a master. You must be an expert of the ability to perceive and recognize patterns of behavior, speech, language, gesture, context in other people. If you can't recognize pattern, you can't do defense because you don't know what you're defending against. You don't know who you're defending against. So this again, the core training is the most important training. We're going to teach you how to emotionally bond with anyone's deepest desires so that they actually want to do what you want them to do. How does this relate to dealing with people in a defensive posture? When you learn how to bond with people the way I teach you, even the most diehard predators will start to give things away. It becomes progressively harder and harder and harder for someone to lie to you when you apply things like the emotional bonding technique or the three magic questions protocol. People, their truth just starts to leak out where you can acquire it, you can analyze it, you can profile it, and you can do something with it. Okay. It also comes with a 240, I think it's 240 page manual called the Killer Influence Mind Control Manifesto. This is our Bible. This is the one that allows us to look at different situations and circumstances and have the right technique for the right time. Total value on this is $2,497, but we've bundled a whole bunch more stuff with this that we want to give you as a way to round out your training so that you have everything you need to protect yourself and to create the life you actually want the way that you want it. Right. So if you act right now, if you click the link that Mia's putting in the chats and stuff like that, you're also going to get these amazing special bonuses. The first one is our Defense Against the Dark Arts home study course. This was the course that for the last 3 or 4 years has been the #1 NLP training program in the world, rated by globalgurus.org. And it is specifically a variation of our Killer Influence protocol designed to teach you how to counter manipulation, how to use hypnotic influence and behavioral profiling to discover the predators, unlock their secrets, and use them against them and make them go away. Right? So this has been an award-winning program. It has completely changed people's lives. I think somebody was mentioning that their Defense Against the Dark Arts training really helped them navigate social media and social influencers. It's really, really powerful. It will teach you how to look at somebody and profile them in as little as 90 seconds, how to read their micro expressions, how to understand the 21 different conversational defensive patterns that sociopaths and narcissists and Machiavellians actually use to try to evade capture or evade responsibility for the actions they take. How to avoid hoovering. Hoovering is if you ever manage to fully extract yourself from a relationship with a narcissist or a sociopath or somebody who's predatory in nature, they will often engage, especially if it wasn't their idea, they will often engage in a set of tactics designed specifically to suck you back into the relationship. The technical term for that is called hoovering. And we cover extensively what those tactics look like, how they work, and how you can avoid them going forward. It's really, really powerful. There is a section here not just on micro expressions, but actually on face reading as well. Lie detection, the most important lie detection or deception cues that you're most likely to face when somebody is being deceptive with you, how that ties into micro expressions, gestures, postures, things of that nature. It's a very, very comprehensive program on profiling and prevention. In other words, once I recognize what's going on in front of me, how do I deal with that? How do I stop it dead in its track? How do I reverse the gaslighting and the future promising, and how do I break apart those lies and distinctions so that I can actually remove myself from this person's influence once and for all? Defense Against the Dark Arts is the next step for those of you who've already had Killer Influence or CPI. This is where you go next, right? And it's probably one of the most important programs that we sell. You're going to get it for free. It's a $1,997 value. All you got to do is click that link in the chat and Mia will set you up. There's a question coming up in the chat. Well, what if I have some of these programs It's fine. If you as we go through the package today and you see things you've already gotten, that's okay. Just click the link, make your purchase, um, reach out to me and let her know that you've got some duplicates in your package. She will swap them out for you as long as the price point is equal or lesser value. We can make that work for you so that you have a package that has unique products in it. Now, some people in the past, I'm going to warn you, some people figured that out and tried to game us. They would buy a package that they bought like 3 or 4 times and swapped out different products every time, not thinking we would catch you. Please, please, please do the honorable thing. If you have something duplicated, let us know. We're happy to swap it out once or twice. But if we see a pattern, then we reserve the right to just say no. We're not going to do that anymore. Okay. We want you to be happy. We want you to be satisfied. We don't want you buying products you already got, right? But we want to make sure that we're being fair. With fairness goes both ways, right? We love you guys. We respect you. So go ahead and click your links. Renegade Reframing is probably next to Defense Against the Dark Arts, the most powerful program I teach. Not that they're all not powerful, but Renegade Reframing, the art and science of conversational belief change and overcoming objections, is the single most targeted, direct weapon against manipulation other than profiling and avoidance. Because no matter how good you are at profiling, no matter how diligent you are in trying to avoid these people, you will find yourself, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. You will find yourself having to spar with these people. Renegade Reframing allows you to take anything that they say, anything that they do, and instantly turn the tables on them, to stop them dead in their tracks, pattern interrupt them, and install a new set of behaviors, a new context, or a new belief, so that every attempt they make at gaslighting you becomes you reversing that gaslight on them and making them feel shitty about it, if they're capable of it. There's about 14 different patterns in here that, if you use them on yourself, will dramatically change every belief that you have. In fact, that's the very first exercise that we give all of our students with this program, is we have them take a piece of paper and list every limiting belief that they have, that they know of. And then as we're teaching the patterns, we have them use those patterns on their own limiting beliefs to make their mind and brain work better. And by the time they're done, their brain is so free and so open, they can't imagine why they were ever limited to begin with. That's just what happens when you apply it benevolently to you. We use this in therapy all the time to dramatically change people's belief systems or overcome objections in 30 seconds or less. Okay? In the context in which you're here to learn this, this is the fastest way to turn the tables on an aggressor. It's a persuasion aggressor. By reframing anything they say, turning it and changing the meaning of it or the context of it, all of a sudden they're confused, they're on the defensive, they don't know what just happened, and now you're controlling the interaction. But that actually presupposes you have the guts to actually do it, right? How do I know if you have the guts to actually do it? Well, you might start by clicking the link, right? Okay, so it's a $1,997 value. We're going to give this to you free. Why? Because we want you to be ready. We just want you to be prepared, right? I really love this course because you can actually have reframe parties where you invite people over and you have everybody write down like beliefs, excuses, sales objections, anything where somebody's giving you a bullshit reason to do something or not do something. And you just you play a little game, like a drinking game, where you have a person throw out the limiting belief or the excuse, and then you give the other person a card and they flip the script on them, and then you can make the person drink or whatever. I don't advocate drinking games, but anytime you can gamify something, you deepen the learning of it. So I think Renegade Reframing has the potential to be a really, and for those of you who would like to be faster on your feet, for those of you who'd like to be able to turn a phrase really quickly, this is probably the one course that gets you there the fastest, because you got to think quick, right? And the more you practice game and in a game like kind of a setting, the faster your brain learns. So I highly recommend this, whether you buy it separately or whether you buy it, as part of your package on tonight's webinar. This is something you really should have. But ideally, we always want you to have either Killer Influence or CPI first, and then this, layering it on top. Okay, so total value on this is $1,997 value. We're going to give this to you for free. Total combined math of the value here is the $6,491 if you register before the end of the webinar. And the last one in the bonus package that we're going to talk about is charisma and conversion. Now, I originally created this program, because I wanted to help people become more influential and persuasive to large groups of people. What I realized as I was creating it was that I was creating the perfect self-defense system for anybody who is passionate about self-help. How many of you have ever gone to a seminar and by the end of the seminar, you're rushing to the back of the room to buy everything the person on stage offered you? Anybody ever do that? Would you like to know how they did it and all the sneaky, dirty tricks they used to program and prime your brain to rush to the back of the room and buy everything, even if you didn't want it? That's what charisma and conversion is all about. Charisma and conversion will teach you the art and science of mass persuasion from both sides. It's going to teach you how to create very powerful persuasion architecture in your talks, so that when you talk, just the structure of your talk hypnotically primes people to want to buy your product or service while delivering maximum value. There's two types of presentation systems in there. One is heart-centered, which you use for people who are very spiritual, self-helpy, um, uh, mindset oriented. And then there's what we call an away from or a pain-centric talk designed for smaller groups and primarily for healthcare applications, where people are more focused on making the pain go away than preventing the pain to begin with. So both are very effective, and in the context in which they're derived, pretty much bulletproof. Um, but then we'll talk about stagecraft, how to hold a mic on stage, where to stand, how to stand for maximum effect, how to create powerful hypnotic inductions, how to use embedded commands, how to use spatial anchoring, all the secret things that high-level trainers do, but don't teach their students how to do so that they can maintain an advantage. Now, once you understand this, you'll never look at a self-help seminar or a 3-day training like a T. Harv Eker or a Joe Dispenza or a Mark Victor Hansen or Lisa Sasevich or Tony Robbins or um, what's the other, Bandler, for example. You'll never look at those trainings through the same eyes again. You'll understand exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and how you can stop them from doing it to you. The better part is that if you ever become somebody who wants to build their business through public speaking and you want to give people the greatest, most powerful, impactful experience possible, you'll have the exact tools to do it. Okay? So charisma conversion teaches you both sides of the persuasion paradigm, but it gives you the ability to exert influence on a mass level, as well as to not be influenced by those group settings, because group settings are extraordinarily hypnagogic. Okay. The more people in a group, the more hyper suggestible everyone in the group becomes. Okay. It's a product of resonance, right? And we talk about that in vibrational influence, but it's enough to know that it's here. Okay. So let's look at what we've got so far. This is the offer: Secrets of Human Influence, Defense Against the Dark Arts Home Study course. 17 videos, a 7-stage universal persuasion protocol, plus the Killer Influence Mind Control Mastery Manual, $2,497 value. We're going to throw in the Defense Against the Dark Arts, Counter Manipulation and Influence and Behavioral Profiling Secrets Home Study course, the Renegade Reframing, how to instantly overcome any objection to change any belief in seconds, and of course, the Charisma and Conversion, Hypnotic Presentation Skills for Presenters and Public Speakers. Total value on this is $8,488. But we want you to have a deal. It's the summertime, and we need to be ready for the winter and the fall when all the high-level persuasion starts being leveled at us because we're getting out of vacations and all this other stuff. So I want to give you the best deal humanly possible today, and you're not going to have to pay $8,488. Oh, nay, nay. We're not even going to charge you $53.47 nor $23.47, which is actually lower than the actual program cost, right? For those of you who are ready to level up, you can get it all for a low one-time investment of just $997. For those of you who need a little extra break because it's summer, we can break that up into 3 easy installments of just $397 each. All you need to get yours is go to www.nlppower.com/DADA. That's DADA, Defense Against the Dark Arts. nlppower.com/Defense Against the Dark Arts. Clearly, some people were asking for it sooner than I got to the link, because the links have been showing up now for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So if you guys know what you want, go ahead and grab it. Click those links right now. Everything that we're giving you comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee. If for some reason you're not winning more money, you're not closing more deals, you're not feeling more safe, more empowered, more confident, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'll help you as much as we can. And if it's still not working for you, we'll give you back every red cent you invested in the program. Because if the program's not working for you, we don't want your investment. We want you to use it for something that actually gives you the wins you know you want and need. But I know for a fact, in my heart of hearts, I believe in it with all my heart, that this will give you exactly what you need if you actually do the work and actually have the will to influence, the will to confront in many cases. If you can develop that, and I'll help you do that to the best of my ability, then you'll be super successful with these courses. Okay. And if not, pick up the phone and we'll help you if we can. If we can't, we'll give you your money back. Okay. So just click those links right now, nlppower.com/DADA. Click the link. Now, for those of you who like lots of stuff, right? If this wasn't amazing enough for you guys already, and it's a pretty powerful package, I'll tell you that up front. If you grab your course before August 4th, 2026, we're also going to include these special fast action bonuses. We're going to get the NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Practice Group and the Unlimited 15-year video archive is a $1,597 value. The NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Program is a monthly live virtual workshop where we get together on the third Saturday of every month from 11 a.m. to about 4 p.m. And I literally go around the room and I say, Susan, what do you want to learn? Delilah, what do you want to learn? World of Bliss, what do you want to learn? Access Buddy, what do you want to learn? Silverfire, what do you want to learn? Regina, what do you want to learn? Corey, what do you want to learn? Right? And I find out what you guys want to learn. I write it on the board. I step back. I look at everything you guys want to learn. I see where they all kind of connect. I create a lesson plan for you guys on the spot. And then for the next 4 hours as a group, we drill on those skills until you can do them backwards and forwards in your sleep. At the end of those 4 or 5, 6 hours, I set you off into the world to apply the skills you've been practicing to get the wins you know you want. The next month, on the third Saturday, you come back, I'm going to ask, what do you want to learn? 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 And I'm going to write them down and we're going to drill and skill again. The NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Program is not a program that will get you a certificate. It's what will give you the skills the certificate represents, right? I don't care how many certificates you got on your wall. If when I call you to perform your skills and you can't do them, those certificates are worthless. So you won't get a certificate from the Mastermind Mentoring Program. What you will get is something much more powerful, much more important. The ability to use these skills, the willingness to use these skills, and the understanding of when and where and how to use these skills. It gives you ownership of the material, not just access. And you'll be surrounded by people who are just like you, who want the same things you want, who want to get better, who want to support you and be supported. And I'll be right there with you every single step of the way to make sure that you get what you came for, that you leave with the exact skills that you need to move your life forward in the way that's important to you. And even better, we've been running this program since October 2010. Do the math. That's 16 years, guys. We have videotaped and recorded every single training. And as a member of the NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Program in good standing, you get unfettered 24-hour-a-day access to every ounce of footage in our vault. And this is stuff that has never been shown on YouTube. It's never been featured in a product. It's completely private. Think about how many videos I have publicly available on our channel and realize that 99% of this material has never been seen except by masterminders. You'll have unlimited binging privileges for as long as you're in the program. And it's a great, it covers everything I've ever taught, from advanced hypnotic persuasion to defense against the dark arts to clothing selection, attraction and dating techniques, advanced trauma therapy and healing techniques, influence and persuasion, psychokinesis, energetics, NLP, hypnotherapy, holographic memory resolution, face reading, lots of face reading, lie detection. If it's in my wheelhouse, it's in these videotapes or these video recordings. We don't do tapes anymore. Shows you how old I am, right? Anyway, total value on this is a $1,597 value. We add that to everything we've talked about, and you're looking at a $10,085 value. We're also going to include the Stealth Instant Conversational Hypnosis Crash Course. This is for people who are impatient like me. It's designed for you to watch a couple videos and be out hypnotizing people today, right? It's one of the most powerful programs we've ever created because it's fast. It allows you to cut through the BS and get right to the abilities and the skills of hypnotizing people during normal conversations. So it has 3 videos on language patterns. It has 5 videos on, actually has 7 videos, 7 videos? I think it's 7 videos on language patterns. It has a video on instant and rapid inductions, one on emotional bonding, one on 3 magic questions, one on lie detection. There might even be some manifestation stuff in here as well. It's a really powerful, very condensed program. It comes with MP3 downloads. It comes with manuals. It comes with transcripts. It comes with workbooks. But to really get started fast, you only need to watch 2 of all the videos that are there, and you'll be out hypnotizing people in less than 3 hours if you actually just watch the videos and go out and apply it. It's really powerful. And for those of you who are chronically impatient like me, it's a godsend, right? It's a $997 value. We're going to give this to you absolutely free for one of the next 15 people, 21 people to click these links if you haven't done it already. If you've already clicked the links, you've already got this. It's in your bonus package. So congratulations. $11,082 value. And for the next 21 people who register today, we're going to give you a VIP spot at our next Killer Influence Secrets of Covert Hypnosis 5-day hypnotic persuasion boot camp. This is going to be run August 18th through the 22nd via Zoom. There is no live in-person training. This is all Zoom all day, and you can watch it in your underwear if you want to. I'd recommend not doing that because there may be some drills where we have to stand up, and we don't want to see your delicates necessarily, right? It's going to teach you how to emanate authority and calm on demand, how to emanate a sense of charisma and unshakable, unreadable, in command energy, right? Susan saying, right? It's going to teach you how to spot manipulators in seconds before they open their mouth, use behavior deviation, IQ, speech patterns, etc., to profile anyone, detect lies, framing, covert comments. We're going to include a lot of dark arts material in this training just because of the content in which we're promoting. It's going to teach you the 7 most powerful language patterns, how to control your state anytime, anywhere, under any situation or circumstance, how to detect lies, how to profile people in as little as 90 seconds, how to use social hypnotic operators so that when you look at a marketing message, you know exactly what buttons inside of you they're trying to push, and you can make a better decision. Okay? It's completely virtual. You'll get the manual in the email, and on August 18th, we'll just start pounding through these materials, and we'll do it in such a way that you come away from that 5-day training with the ability to do this stuff anytime, anywhere. You'll learn about embedded commands. You'll learn about subliminal communication. You'll learn how to tell compelling and powerful stories. You'll learn how to emotionally bond people to whatever you want so that they do what you want them to do because they're getting everything they want. We'll teach you how to make the things that people want told you no, have them say yes emphatically and give you all their own reasons for why they're saying yes. How to bond with anybody bordering on love in as little as 20 minutes. How to use those same skills to make people tell you the truth and want to give you the truth, even when they have a highly vested interest in not telling you the truth. Some of these things are so powerful that my friend Chase actually started using them in interrogation. I have personal injury attorneys who use this during jury selection to make everybody on the jury panel, whether they're selected or not, love them. They win the case before the court ever goes to trial. Okay? It's super, super, super powerful. It's a $2,497 value. If you combine it with everything that we've got here today, it's a total value of $13,579. We're going to give this to you free. This is a free VIP ticket to the next 21 people who click that Defense Against the Dark Arts link in their chats right now. You'll be able to attend from your home for 5 days and get the deepest, most powerful most unbeatable hypnotic influence training on the planet. And that's not something I say lightly. I'm very, very proud of this, and I'm amazed at what the people who've gone through this training have been able to do. You'll be one of them. Okay. So total value on this, $13,579. And here's what I got for you. Right? You get the Secrets of Human Influence home study course, core program, valued at $2,497. You get the Defense Against the Dark Arts. You get Renegade Reframing, Charisma and Conversion, NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Program, the Stealth Instant Conversational Hypnosis Crash Course, and the Killer Influence Secrets of Covert Hypnosis online training, August 18th to the 20th via Zoom, $2,497 value. You get it all. Total package value is $13,579. You can get it all for just one low investment of $997, or you can break that up into 3 smaller payments of $397 each. All you got to do now is click that link in your chat. Go to www.nlppower.com/defense against the dark arts. That's nlppower.com/DADA. Sorry, had a moment. It's gone now. Anyway, that's what we got for you right now. Before we move back to part 3, who has questions? So Regina's asking, I'd like to learn more about facial recognition of the 3 types you mentioned today, narcissist, psychopath, etc. Okay. That's not something we're going to be able to do today because I actually need visuals and images to show you, but we can cover that in your dark arts training on the 18th. Susan, add me being rich as fuck to your image cycling so I can buy everything. Okay, Susan, I will add you to my image cycling list. All right. Any other questions before we get back to the victimology of things? I promised you I'd go through this and then I'd show you 1 or 2 techniques to kind of stop people in their tracks. You guys are smart. All right. Let's go back to our regularly scheduled program. Okay. So when last we left off, we were talking about recent divorce or end of a relationship, right? So anything that attacks your identity makes you, tends to dissociate you, and your brain and your body will start looking for, Chemo's asking, do I still do the Mondo Supremo packages? Yes, we do. If you want a Mondo, go ahead and reach out to Mia. She'll set you up for that. She should have all the information. For those of you who don't know what the Mondo Supremo package is, we have 2 versions. We have the Platinum package, the Gold package, or the Gold package, and we have the basic one. The basic one is your choice of any 2 live events. Susan says, wait, if you're adding people to image cycling. You know what's funny? This has nothing to do with Defense Against the Dark Arts, but in my Christian mysticism class, in my Buddhist mysticism class, one of the things that we're taught to do as part of our priestly duties is we set aside an hour or 2 hours every day with a list of people who need divine intervention, and we literally pray for them. So when you guys are asking me to do the whole image cycling thing, I keep thinking I got to put my freaking robes on and do this crazy mystical stuff. But that's a different class for a different day. It's just funny. But the Mondo Supremo that Keeman is talking about, the basic one is your choice of any 2 live events between now and the end of time, and your choice of any 2 full training packages valued at $997 or less, or $1997 or less, something like that. Can't remember the exact numbers, but Mia has them. And like 5 smaller digital video courses. It was one of our most popular programs. We ran that for a long, long time, and it is available when people ask for it. Usually the only time we offer that is during our live trainings. So there's a lot of really good deals that we give during our live events, or in this case, the virtual event. So if you guys want better deals than what you're seeing here, maybe show up to one of these things, right? All right, so another one that can really screw with people is recent financial problems or loss of credit. Once again, one of the things I see as a therapist is that our money situation or our financial situation is tied directly to our sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And anything that threatens it, that causes us to feel endangered in some way, will trigger a weakening of our identity, which makes us more susceptible to certain types of influence and persuasion. Okay. Um, if the person has a history of seeking help from suicide hotlines, these people are quite often targeted by predators because they're looking for validation, they're looking for support and affirmation and help. And if you feed them the right diet, they will cleave to you. They will cling to you very, very powerfully. History of few close friends. As a rule, the more friends you have, the more locked in your identity tends to be. Why? Because the people in our lives are identity anchors. This is why when a cult is seeking to seduce you into their ranks, the first thing they will do is surround you with other cult members. They'll befriend you and love bomb you and make you feel loved and supported and wanted and cherished. And as that group becomes more compelling and fulfilling to you than the other friends, now they'll start to find ways to estrange you from the other support group. So it starts with love bombing and then isolation and then enhanced isolation or excommunication. And then when the people you're surrounded with, the ones who've been love bombing you all this time, suddenly give you the rules that you have to obey in order to stay loved, and you break those rules and they shun you or they demean you in some way, that push pull that you're experiencing between the pain and the pleasure, the validation and the excommunication, that creates a very powerful dissociative state. It also creates what we call a fractionation effect. The more times I put you in a certain state, bring you out of it, then put you back into it, the more deeply you will go into that state every single time. So not only is the idea of love bombing and isolation powerful in themselves, the oscillation of it back and forth makes it even stronger than you would think because of the phenomena of fractionation. You'll learn about this in your defense against the dark arts training. You'll learn about this in Killer Influence. It's really, really powerful psychological principle, and it's been used everywhere, from television to movies to the pickup and seduction world to um, interrogation. It's powerful. You're not going to avoid it. You've got to understand it if you want to protect yourself against it. Okay? I'm not pulling any punches here. You've got to know this stuff if you want to be able to fight this stuff. Right? I've been a self-defense instructor pretty much my entire life. And this is the area where most people need the most work and are willing to do the least to make it happen. So please, 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 um, if you have the courses already, open them up and study them. Come to the masterminds. If you don't have the courses yet, please get them. Not for me, for you. Okay. Um, Another thing that these people are looking for, they're looking for people with who are detached or estranged from family. Once again, any form of or not this excommunication or ostracization from a group creates a trauma bubble or a trauma state to a certain degree in a human being. That traumatized state is a dissociative state, which makes a person more hypersuggestible and desperate to fill that void. It's that void inside of us that needs filling that is the strongest lever that a predator has over us. It's the woundings that we carry around inside of us that allow people to reach inside, find our heartstrings, and play whatever song they want. So, the biggest defense, all coursework aside, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest defense tactic I can give you to protect yourself against persuasion that you did not ask for is healing. Heal your wounds, heal your hurts, heal your rages and your traumas. Make Clean that stuff up, fill those gaps with love and confidence and courage and all the good things that make you who you want to be. So that the predators, when they start searching, they don't find any holes in your armor. They don't find any weaknesses that they can exploit. Okay, healing yourself is the fastest way to prevent these things from being done to you. Right? Now, that being said, some of these predators are really good at creating wounds so that they can use them. Okay. So I see Delilah has a hand raised. If you want to go ahead and type your question, I'll see what I can do with that. Right. Another thing that these people are looking for is a desire for notoriety. In other words, when somebody says notoriety, what are we really talking about? We're talking about attention, but a special kind of attention. These people want to be special. Okay. All of us want attention, but not all of us necessarily want to be singled out or pointed out. We want to be accepted. We want to be validated. We want to be loved or accepted, right? But we don't necessarily want to stand out, right? So a lot of times people who are looking for notoriety, who are looking for a place to be special, right? Novelty, right? Or if we're talking about Chase's systems, we've been talking about deviance from the norm, and to be recognized for that. This is what we're talking about. These people are exceptionally easy to manipulate and to lure into other types of behaviors and activities because they want something different than they're used to. Okay. Uh, Strong desire for self-expression. Once again, many an aspiring artist, actress, whatever, have joined cults simply for the desire because they want to be themselves. They want to express their true oneness. They want to step into their power, whatever words you want to put to it, right? Strong desire for self-expression. They may have a history of physical or sexual abuse. This is one I want to talk about kind of extensively because one of the things that a lot of high-level predators will do is they will set up a situation where your boundaries are obvious. They will do something to violate those boundaries intentionally to see what you will do. If you give them a pass, if you say it's okay, if you overlook it or ignore it or don't confront them in any way, they will flag that as a weak boundary, as a sign of weakness. They will do it again. If you violate a boundary and you call them on it, and you're very firm and you're very direct and there's no bullshit in what you're saying, they will read that as this one's not going to be easy. And they will either maybe try once or twice again. And if you do the same thing, they'll leave. Or B, they'll try again harder to see if you cave. If they try harder and you cave, they'll continue with their basic protocol of grooming you. Okay. If you push back again, they'll move on. Okay. This is a really important thing. This is actually one of the things I was going to talk about in a separate section about how do you flag these people? You won't really, for most people, you won't have the training to detect them early on unless you have like the three magic questions protocol, or you have exceptional situational awareness where you hear every other word out of their mouth is about themselves, it's about I, or you're applying some of the flag systems. So one of the things that we talk about in the flag system, which was originally developed by Wendy Patrick, is focus. When somebody is talking to you and they're in an interaction with you, what are they focused on? Are they focused on your job? Are they focused on your physical appearance? Are they focused on where you live? Are they focused on what aspect of you or your life do they focus on? That focus is a sign of intention. Where they place their attention will give you an idea as to their intention. If somebody's talking to you about how beautiful you are and how hot and wonderful you look, we obviously know that they're focused on your physical being, their physical presence. This is probably somebody who's more interested in you for the body you're walking around in than what's inside the body, right? If someone's focused on where you live and the incomes in that area and things of that nature, they're probably more interested in your house and your neighborhood and what's there than they are in you as a person, right? If they're more interested in your bank account and your investments, right? And again, some the more cagey ones, they'll talk and then they'll circle around and then they'll ask again. They're very good observers. But what are they focused on? Right? What are they focusing on in the interaction? Right? That's called focus. The other one is lifestyles. Now, the rest of the flag system requires you to actually do these things when you're not in this person's presence. That's why I don't spend a lot of time talking about the whole flags protocol because it requires you to be proactive when you're not in that person's presence. And most of the time, when you're dealing with somebody who's very adept at charisma, very adept at creating those feelings of affirmation and credibility and validation and making you feel good about yourself, the last thing you want to do is destroy that illusion. The last thing you want to do as a person is find out that this person is not what you feel they are, right? So there's this thing that I've talked about in the context of in the past. I've talked about the willingness to confront. And in my courses on lie detection and deception that I've given in the past, I've made the rather provocative statement that many people accept a lie even when they know it's a lie because the pain, the price of confronting the lie and uncovering the truth and exposing the truth is too painful, right? They would rather accept the lie than lose the relationship, right? They would rather accept the lie than take the risk of pissing off their boss and getting fired. So it becomes a battle of priorities. Why do I say this? Because when somebody who's really good at these types of influence and persuasion tactics is applying them to you properly, you're going to feel tremendously good about this person. You're going to want this person to be exactly what they represent or what you perceive them to be. And you will go into a state of what we call transportability. Transportability is a flow state that happens when we're engrossed in a narrative. And we fight and resist anything that requires us to think differently or breaks the flow of the narrative. It's a trance. But in order to find the predator, in order to uncover the bad guy before they get their hooks into you, you have to break the trance. You must take on a different mental state. And that's the hardest thing for a lot of people in these fields or who want to learn this material to really understand and embrace. When an interrogator goes in to a to interview or interrogate somebody, they're in a very specific state. They already believe that nothing this person says is true. They're going in with the mindset everything coming out of this person's mouth is bullshit until they've proven otherwise. They go in with a deception oriented mindset. Because the moment you start focusing on the things they say that are true, other filters in your brain take over and other filters turn off. So it takes more cognitive energy to go after somebody and uncover deception than it does to just accept what they tell you. People, and this is why when you're dealing with somebody who's got the whole package, they've done the profiling, they've done the identification practice, they've done the credibility and the affirmation and the emotional appeal. You're in a state where you don't want this person to be other than what you see. You're in a hypnotic state already. And so you will resist doing the due diligence. And here's the rub. Even if you do the due diligence and the information that comes up does not match, you will still want to believe what you experienced personally versus what you saw on your research. Why? Because we don't want to be wrong. We want that feeling that this person has created in us. We're addicted to it. Okay? Let me ask you guys a question. Be honest. How many of you have heard at least once or twice in your life that social media is engineered for addicting you to social media? How many of you heard that at least once? Just type it in the chat. Yeah? How many times have you been on social media today? You understand? Knowing about these things and being at the mercy and the experience, right? See, even though we consciously know, doesn't stop our physiology from taking over. It doesn't stop our brains from generating a reason to ignore what's right in front of us and what we already know. Because your emotional states, your physiological states are more powerful than your will in many cases. And this is why you need to be constantly reminded. You need to develop different habits. You need to develop different mindsets. This is why I kept coming. That's why I started the whole training with this idea of, if I teach you how to do this stuff, do you have the ability to actually do it? When you're in front of somebody who's checking all the boxes for you, do you want to rush right out and find out how much of it is a lie? And when you're confronted with that, how much resistance do you have to what you're seeing? How much cognitive dissonance are you experiencing when the information you've uncovered doesn't match the experience that you've had? Right? These are things that give predators an advantage over us, because we're nice people. We're good people. We want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And that is our Achilles heel. That is what gets us, and that is what they look for. We are socialized to not judge people. We're socialized not to necessarily follow our first impressions, or to assume that people are just lying. We often do in certain contexts. But in this case, when someone's presenting and somebody tells us something, even if we know it's a lie, we still entertain the possibility that it could be true somehow, some way. And that's what we have to stop doing if we want to be effective in stopping predators in their track and actually countering them. We can't be merciful. Mercy gets you hurt. Mercy gets you raped. Mercy gets you broke. Right? So, like I started at the beginning from Dr. Simon's work, you can't, when you see somebody who's exhibiting these characteristics, you must think of them as a predator, not an injured lamb who's just acting out. You can't buy into, well, hurt people hurt other people. Yeah, maybe that's true. But it's not going to stop that person from hurting you. And you're not going to fix that hurt. So you need to treat them like the enemies that they are. So Susan has asked, is there a way to save people who refuse to see they're being scammed, especially when logic and facts only upset them? There's a saying that was quoted by, I think it was either Socrates or Aristotle. And the saying goes something like this: somebody who is not convinced of something themselves will not be convinced by you either. I will connect that. I will bolt that onto a saying by a more recent persuasion expert by the name of Blair Warren, who says, people will resist what you tell them. They will never resist what they conclude. And that right there, my friends, is exactly how you get somebody to stop being scammed. You don't tell them they're being scammed. You engineer a situation where they discover they're being scammed, and it's their conclusion, their idea, their discovery. Because if you try it any other way, you will get fight back, you will get pushback, you will get dissonance, and they will not thank you, at least not right away, for destroying their dreams. Right? You ever hear the expression, no one ever built a statue to a critic? Well, no one ever built a statue to a dream killer either. Right? And many times when you call people on this and you point out the flaws, they cleave to that person even more. There was a story in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, I think it was, where he went to a meeting with this group. And during the group meeting, somebody stood up and started pointing out all the discrepancies, all the flaws, all the things that didn't add up in that person's speech. And by the end of the event, more people joined the cult or the group than had been willing to join before that happened. There's this weird reactance effect that happens when people attack our dreams or what we have accepted as truth. We get angry and we do the opposite of what we should be doing. Okay? And these are the things that predators rely on when they're operating, whether they're conscious of it or not. These are the dynamics that happen. I'll give you an example where I've actually had to use something like this professionally. And it's more of a funny story, but it's one that, again, I wouldn't have been able to learn had I not been doing the things I do. I would go to this convention for many years. For 13 years, I went to a convention called HypnoThoughts, which is the largest hypnosis convention in the world. And there would be hundreds of speakers, thousands of people. And every single event, at least one person would come up to me and they would say, David, I love your stuff, but I have a problem. Your talk is scheduled right across from so-and-so's talk, and I don't know who to go see. And I would look at them right in the eye and I say, well, absolutely, you should go see that other person. And then again, they do something like that. They go, what? So you should go see the other. You can come see me anytime. Go see the other person. And 8 out of 10 times when I'm teaching, I look in the front row and there's the person I just told to go see somebody else. Why? Because many times when a person asks your opinion, they're just looking for something to push against. So they can choose the opposite. It's an autonomy trigger that we have. It's a very weird thing, but I see it a lot where people are emotionally invested in something and they get a message telling them to go the other way. Does that make sense? You guys had these kind of experiences? You've seen somebody that's dating somebody, you said, this guy's a bad influence for you, and they fall in love even more? Or this girl's a bad influence and they fall in love even more? Right? So you have to have a little bit more strategy when dealing with the ins and outs of influence and persuasion. It's not as always linear as you like to make it sound, right? So one of the things that can happen if somebody starts to before we go, let me just do this really quick. In case you was I sharing my screen the whole time? I wasn't sharing my screen the whole time, was I? All right, well, okay. So once again, for those of you who've been on the fence, we'll cover all this stuff in detail at Killer Influence, October 18th. So you're going to get the Secrets of Human Influence home study course, the Defense Against the Dark Arts, Renegade Reframing, Charisma and Conversion, the NLP Power Mastermind Mentoring Program, the Stealth Instant Conversation Hypnosis Crash Course, Killer Influence, Secrets of Covert Hypnosis, and it's all total value is $13,579. You can get it all for one low installment of just $997 each, or 3 installments of $397 each. Why didn't you guys tell me I was sharing my screen the whole time? I thought I was talking to you guys face to face. Right? Go ahead and click that link and get yours, and we'll continue this conversation on the 18th. So yeah, so wow, that happened. Will I be at HypnoThoughts in 2027? I live only 2 hours from then. I have not decided yet if I'm going to be there. It's a timing issue because November is a bad month for me. I have been invited officially to go and present, but I have not made a final decision one way or the other. I think somebody's asking for you in the chat, right? So if somebody approaches you and they start gaslighting you or they start giving you a fit, all you have to do if you really want to stop them in their tracks is look at them and say more. And what you'll see is this, they'll go, what? Well, say more. And what will happen is it pattern interrupts them. And then they start to think and they have to start explaining themselves. And that gives you the opportunity to respond differently. It's a very quick, very fast intervention. But I want you to go out and play with that. And so anytime somebody starts giving you a gaslighting or they start really just reading you the riot act, you just look at them and say, well, say more from it. Say more. Go ahead and do that. Right? Is the August event still happening? Yes, Namisha, but it's going to be virtual, not live. I announced that at the beginning of the webinar, and I think I have to go change it on the website. But yeah, it's going to be virtual. but we are still having it for sure. Okay. All right. So before I turn you guys loose on the world, do you have any questions? No problem, Namisha. I know you're local and you love coming to live events, but apparently more people want to stay home in their underwear. So, Susan, maybe not post your email in the group and phone number as the best approach to whatever you're doing. All right. All right. Well, you guys enjoy the show? Did you guys learn a lot? All right. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please click your links and join me on August 18th through the 22nd. We're going to go deep, we're going to go strong, and we're going to go long. This is one of the most powerful programs on the planet for doing just about anything with the human mind. It's going to make a lot of things clear for you guys. It's going to give you the skills you need to not only protect yourself from unwanted or unethical persuasion, it's going to give you the ability to actually inspire and motivate and lead people to do whatever you want them to do for their own reasons, and they'll love you for it. So, in the words of the immortal Carol Burnett, I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just got started, and before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. Good night, my friends. Click those links. Join me on the 18th. If you have questions, reach out to me, reach out to Mia, 858-282-4663, or Mia at nlppower.com. I'm Dr. David Snyder. This is Weapons of Social Seduction, Defense Against